Now I request the speaker for today's lecture, Professor Ramesh Raskar sir, to please deliver the lecture on REDX, Innovating for Billions. Professor Ramesh Raskar sir, please. A movie will be played first.
Curiosity with this photo of a bullet piercing through an apple. An exposure just a millionth of a second. But now, 50 years later, we can go a million times faster and see the world not at a million or a billion, but 1 trillion frames per second. That you can create slow motion videos of light in motion. And with that, we can create cameras that can look around corners beyond line of sight or see inside our body without an X-ray. Now, my passion and reality have often been like this, just a blank screen. And this is a huge problem. Now, one time my passion was to create medical tools that can be used by millions. So I was very fortunate when with the team I was able to create a device called iNetra, which is a snap-on eyepiece. You snap it in your phone, look through it, dial a few buttons. When you hit calculate, it gives you a prescription for your eyeglasses. What we are doing now is not just 3D, it's about creating displays that correct for the human eye. And then we did a nationwide call and selected about 150 innovators and makers to work with us. Then we spent a week in January of 2014, which is just 3 months after Inc., and worked on 20 projects, not a hackathon, but with a build-a-thon. And then after that, every 3 months, we go back to Nasik and work with innovators from MIT as well as the rest of the nation and guiding them.
Hello.
It's great to be here at MIT. I feel like I'm at home. It's the same institution. It's wonderful to be back in Pune. And although I was born in Nasik, my formative years are here from Pune at COP. And then after I started my graduate school, I actually started the website for the city of Pune, go.to/Pune, in 1993. So it was the first website for any city in India. So Pune had the first website of any city in India about 23 years ago. It's kind of amazing. And in that journey, I actually met Amit Paranspe, who's here. I did not meet him in person. It was completely virtual. I think you were still in Texas at that time. Is that right? And he and many of us started collaborating on promoting Pune online. I remember no other city had a website at that time, and then many individuals got together, and we created a chat page, which we can call a WhatsApp of our time. We created a directory page. We created an online marketplace, and amazingly, many Punekers met each other on our chat pages, and I was writing all the scripts on my computer, on my server, in my office as a grad student, and some of them even got married. So we even created Shadi.com back then for Punekers. And in that process, what I realized is that where you are from plays a very significant role in how you think about a place. And being here at Pune, being here, at that time at Engineering Institute, was a really unique experience for me because I was a kid from a small town outside Nasik, and to come to a bigger city and be surrounded by amazing talent and the dynamism was fantastic. And we would often come over here to MIT, Professor Karad, and meet some of our friends. It was much cleaner, much more beautiful campus here. And it was a great journey coming up here to go through. Today I'm going to talk about how that journey has inspired me to think about innovating for billions. Because today we talk a lot about learning, and I feel that in the educational framework, learning has become kind of standardized, and we understand what that is. But what is very unique is peer-to-peer learning. I would argue that, especially in engineering colleges, we love our professors, we love our teachers, and we appreciate everything they do for us. But the true learning actually happens outside the classroom. When students start talking to each other, they brainstorm about the ideas, they challenge each other's thoughts in a very open and honest manner, and they start brainstorming, and they think in their holidays and their vacations about what they should do, and really enforce or sometimes challenge the way they're even gaining certain knowledge and the way they're applying it to solve problems. And if you can make that a more integrated experience as opposed to something that happens just by chance, the world would be an amazing place. So let's think about some of the problems that we encounter in our daily life. Imagine street addresses. Pune is slightly better, but if you just go outside Pune, if you have to tell somebody where you live, you'll say, take a right and then the third left after the bank, and you'll see a blue house, and that's my house, right? And this is great for kind of reasonable for navigating, but imagine if you want to get an ambulance delivered, in a short time. I remember my sister was pregnant, and I was about 15 at that point, and I realized if something happens and we had to go to a hospital very quickly, there is no way for us to do anything. This is before we had even a phone in our house. I would have to go on the street, try to flag down a rickshaw, and then take her to a hospital. It would have been much easier to say, we are at 36 Gandhi Road, send a rickshaw to that. So it's not just about navigation, but it also matters when we talk about kind of property rights, we talk about e-commerce deliveries, we talk about getting any services delivered to you, and then it plays a role in many other aspects of your life. But it's something missing for about 85% of Indians right now. About 85% of the Indians have no street name and no street number. So how can we tackle that? Imagine, most people speak Marathi than French. Wouldn't it be great if we can have a voice interface
to all the services in Marathi. Why don't we have that? It seems like a lost opportunity. We have enough people who speak Marathi working at top organizations in the world, but many people who live in rural areas and farther parts of Maharashtra do not speak any other language, and it's very difficult for them to be tech savvy to use these services. A solution would like that would change their world. And in informal sectors, unorganized sectors, there are so many opportunities, so many challenges. We simply do not get to even explore that. So I would say, when you're at MIT, when you're at top institutions, we are very good at figuring out the known unknowns, which is we say, let's learn mechanical engineering, and if that's a known problem, what are the unknown aspects of it, and go forward. Chemical engineering, polymers, computer science, pick your favorite field. The known unknowns we're very good at figuring out. The unknown unknowns is something we still haven't figured out. And the unknown unknowns are problems like this, because they fall somewhere between different fields, and we never get to them. And they're not defined by something that's very siloed. To figure out how to have street addresses and a digital identity for every individual is not something we're going to learn in any one field, because it involves satellite imaging, crowdsourcing, computer vision, machine learning, physical vehicles, equipping vehicles with new sensors, and a whole range of activities to make that a functional thing. So the emphasis is really on the unknown unknowns. So when we're faced with a problem like this, there are three types of people. Actually, there are four types, but I'll talk about three types first. When faced with a problem, many people will say, just chalta hai, whatever. Some people like to complain, and some people like to solve. So let's do a quick check. When you're faced with a big problem, let's say you see a child on a traffic signal, and you wish that child, who's begging, wish the child would go to school and have a better career. When we see a problem like that, a lot of us just say, chalta hai, what am I going to do about it? And some of us start complaining about it. This is just nuisance, this is people on the street, beggars on the street, we should just get rid of them, pack them somewhere else. And a few small fraction will start thinking about how to actually solve that problem. But we don't even know where to start. But they would at least make an attempt, right? So we live in a world where we are constantly bombarded with all kinds of problems, and there are only so many battles we can pick to continue and actually make a sense of all the challenges around us. But broadly speaking, who here is in the first category? Just chalta hai. Okay, I gave an example where nobody's going to say that. Okay, we got few hands up. That's very good. How many of you like to complain? And we are Punekers, remember? Okay, we got a few hands up. What do you like to complain about? What's the reasoning? Go ahead. You said you like to complain, right? Yes. So what do you like to complain about? And tell me your name as well. Sorry? Yeah? Right. Yeah. Excellent. So you're complaining Bijli Sadak Pani, we should be able to complain about that. That's good, right? And it's important, by the way. We need some people who are saying chalta hai, and we need some people who actually complain about it, and we need some people who likes to solve. Okay? So we got few complainers and few solvers. So there's a fourth category, which is where nobody raised a hand. These are people like, I don't care. IDK, IDC, right? So Desh Deshpande, who's my mentor, said something very important. He said, the progress of society depends on the ratio of the types of people that you see here on the screen. Of course, the more solvers there are, the rapid progress you'll make in a society. I think it's a very profound statement that he has made. So let's see how we think about invention and innovation and solving the problems of the society. And when I'm talking about problems of society, I don't mean kind of bottom of the pyramid problems. It can be anything. It could be you create a new, energy source, or you create a new material that's highly durable. Anything that has a practical impact on society. When we think about Silicon Valley, that's just a proxy for a place that has a lot of solvers, versus rest of the world, where you have very few solvers and a lot of problems. So what ends up happening in Silicon Valley is that they actually have more solvers than problems. So people end up doing things that are not even that important. You have a lot of startups working on almost meaningless problems. They're trying to invent and work on them. But fortunately, there are so many of them that eventually they'll waste their time. They'll spend a couple of years working on something stupid, and then they will grow up, and then eventually a few of them will reach a maturation where in fact they're working on the next Hyperloop, or the next space technology, or the next self-driving car, or an amazing machine learning algorithm, or next microfluidics, and so on. So eventually they get there. The rest of the world, unfortunately, has so few solvers that if we just let them do what they want, the way we would do it in Silicon Valley, they will actually fumble, and very few of them will make anywhere. It's just law of numbers. So that's kind of unfortunate that we cannot copy-paste the models in Silicon Valley for startups and entrepreneurship and invention and apply them to the rest of the world. And then you have the other axis, which is incremental innovation versus disruptive innovation. Most people would just make things better. They would take things they already know and make them better. So if you know how to run 2 hotels, you would open a 3rd hotel that's slightly better. But a disruptive innovation would be that you would just open Oyo, right? And use a really clever algorithm to do optimization of supply chain, supply and demand. So if you want to use really truly disruptive innovation, that's very critical. So what I'm talking about here is impact innovation that's done in an environment where you may not have that many solvers. There are too many problems than the number of solvers. At the same time, you want to encourage them to use disruptive solutions. All right, so think about this top right over here. Now let's think about the problem we face in making that happen. Right? If we, on the left, we have amazing institutes like this one who are doing academic training and research, and we're doing a lot of curiosity-driven work. Let's build another robot, let's build another satellite, let's build another material, and so on. And this is very, very important because this is the foundation of how we can get the youth generation prepared for the challenges of the world. So it's very, very, very important. And then we also have community building events, and we have organizations that host events or bring people together, and then we have hackathons, and we have contests, and we have awards, and this really gets people fired up and puts them in a problem-solving, innovative mindset. And that to me is also important part of the foundation, because a community that doesn't promote, that doesn't celebrate inventors, innovators, and problem solvers is according to Desh Deshpande's philosophy, is also going to fall behind. So that's all great. And then on the right side, we have very high expectations of our youth. We expect them to do startups. We expect them to join large companies and make an impact there, or government ventures, or start nonprofits, and so on. If you're thinking about a startup, you're thinking about joining an incubator, accelerator, and so on. So we have a lot of expectations from them to kind of come together and solve all this. So how many of you here are thinking about doing a startup, for example? And how many of you already have a startup or have done a startup? Okay, there's a good sprinkling, right? So you said you're already doing a startup? What kind of startup, and what are the typical things you do? Just give me like a 30-second version. Yeah. Yes. Excellent.
product ideas and working on the product development, which could be largely used by the scientific community in life sciences and healthcare.
Excellent,
So-
excellent. And what's your name again?
I am Dr. Madhura Vipra.
Okay. So Madhura, what were the challenges that you faced to get started?
Oh, quite a few. I mean, to list them in 30 seconds would be a challenge in itself.
You're an entrepreneur, you have an elevator pitch.
But
So.
yeah, so mostly getting good resources is a big challenge, I would say. You know, currently I'm facing that challenge. Apart from that, kind of selling your ideas into the from the niche sector is also a little challenge, because people say हमको इसमें कुछ समझता नहीं है. So that's another challenge.
Right.
I think these are the two main challenges. Everything else is pretty much solvable. I mean, there were, but then they could
You have
be
the confidence. What about getting started? Just to get started, what were the challenges? Now they're all up and running, but just to get started.
Again, I think getting good resources, you know, who have this mentality to, you know, get into the product mode of action from services mode.
What about your team, forming a team and so on?
Yeah, so that's the reason. So, I mean, to make them think like for a product was a little bit challenging, because they are more tuned for the services kind of work. And they are ready to do what they have been asked to do if they are given instructions how to do it.
Right.
So the innovative part was something that I found was not kind of somehow not there especially in the well, I think there is a difference between 4 or 5 years again too. I mean, I'm getting some better people now, but
Yes.
4 or 5 years back when I started,
So forming a team was very, very
I had
challenging.
a little challenge there.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you, Madhura.
Thanks.
Yes, go ahead. Tell me your challenges to get started. I think there's one back here. Go ahead. I think you're in glasses. Tell us your name as well.
Yeah, hi Ramesh. I'm Prashant Rane. We are in a startup to build an anti-counterfeit solution. So finding the fake things, fake medicines, fake anything for that matter, which affects the people's life. The initial problem was to actually articulate what is commercially viable, because there are lots of ideas. There is no dearth of ideas.
Right.
But what will be really feasible and usable? So we try to follow IDEO philosophy and try to be at the center of that business technology user world. And that was really challenging, because we tend to believe every of our idea is very good unless we go out and talk to people and we figure out this may not be the right solution.
Excellent.
And our current challenge is, I don't know whether to say it here on this forum, but our current challenge is
Please
funding, which is funding, but as Doctor said, that is probably solvable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. And funding indirectly means writing a business plan that's extremely compelling, right? That's what it means. Anybody else? Go ahead. In the back. You can start shouting.
So, one of the challenges that I had expected is that I faced was that expectation is very different from the reality. So things, when things get slower because of factors that are external, for example, bureaucratic factors are almost there everywhere.
Right.
And finding the right set of people who can guide you in the right direction when you don't have personal experience of a lot of years.
Absolutely.
Those were a few.
Okay. So you get a sense, thank you very much. You get a sense from Madhura to counterfeiting to medical devices. And I have done a lot of startups of my own, and I invest in some and work with a lot of VCs and so on. And making this transition actually is very, very challenging. It's very challenging. I think we have this assumption that somehow folks will make this jump from academics and research and a strong community that's been built, so-called ecosystem, and make this magical transition to the right. And if I hear what you're saying, and the three main problems we face is how to create a team, how to identify and articulate the problem itself, and third is how can we have the appropriate solution/business plan. Right? And these are all non-trivial issues. When it comes to team, the way it's done typically, and maybe Madhura, your experience is different, is we look at somebody we know, somebody who was in our class, somebody who's our friend, and so on, right? Our cousin, And we try to create a team based on those people. But in reality, the team has to be sufficiently diverse, and the team has to be made of people who are just appropriate for that venture, as opposed to people you're familiar with. So formation of a team is very difficult for young people. The second challenge is selecting the problem. Now, when we face a problem, actually we don't express it as a problem. We often express it as a question or an annoyance, right? Or an opportunity. But it's very difficult to express that a problem statement. So if you have a medical device, or you say, hey, there's garbage on the street, or you see, a kid not going to school at a street corner, we express that as an annoyance. But to truly express it as a problem statement, say, to deal with very systemic issue that we have to really solve, if you break it down, the problem is this. This is where the nugget is. Because if we solve this, we can attack 70-80% of the original challenge, the original annoyance, the original opportunity. So to nugget it, to bring it down to something that really matters, is actually non-trivial. And another issue with selecting the right problem for young people is that just by the nature of our education or the way our society works, and a young individual is not going to see every problem that's out there. So that's why you will see, a lot of startups that are either in the e-commerce space or hyper-local delivery, or of course gaming and dating and things like that. But it will be very rare to see what Madhura and some of you are doing, which is looking at issues in health or agriculture or education or transport and so on, right? It's very difficult to imagine young people getting there because it's not something they see, on a daily basis. It's very difficult for them to imagine that those are actually massive opportunities. That's where the nugget is, and that's where we can have a massive impact on society. And then when it comes to solution, as I said on the previous slide, the solutions will be used that are somewhat incremental, because that's what we understand, that's what we can do. So if you have formed a team of your buddies or if people your knowledge circle, your knowledge envelope is going to be somewhat limited. So you're not going to use the latest techniques in machine learning or drone technology or microbiomes and so on to get there. So now we have this problem where we have a team that's too friendly and based on what you know each other. We have a problem that's in a red ocean as opposed to a blue ocean. Red ocean means a lot of competition, blue ocean means wide open. Or it's a problem that's not really what the nugget of an opportunity is. And then we have a solution that may or may not be disruptive, may or may not be scalable out there. So that is a little bit scary, right? Because we have this huge expectation, right? That we are sending our young people into innovation and entrepreneurship. Often we're going to run contests and awards, and we're going to give somebody, 10,000 rupees, 2 lakh, 5 lakh, an award saying, hey, listen, you have a bicycle that crushes wheat. It's such a good idea. We really love you, and here is 1 lakh rupee as an award. What that's going to do, and what they're going to do is going to take this individual, they're going to spend a year or two of their life, because they think they got an award, and spend a lot of energy trying to make that better and better and better, when we, overall understand that this is not a very scalable solution. There are 100 others who are using bicycle to do X, and it's not something they can take and solve a major problem that's going to become highly sustainable. So we have created this a really awkward situation for us by promoting an individual, of course being highly appreciative of their innovative ability, but letting them work on a problem with a team, a problem and a solution. That's simply not right. So as I said earlier, in the rest of the world, we don't have the luxury of sending solvers to work on meaningless problems. We want the solvers to work on problems that really matter, right? So everything we have on the left is great, but we need to let the youngsters realize that this is just a foundation, and that on its own is not enough to go to the right. Does everybody get that? Okay. In a way, what I'm saying is that an innovator is not necessarily an entrepreneur, and startups may or may not be the right way to make an impact on society. Now, I want to say that very carefully, because I love startups, I love entrepreneurship, I love innovation, I love innovators. So those are all important part of a society, but the way the message is being delivered is very confusing. Okay? And just, I'll take a small detour about the hot topic of the country for the last 1 month or so, and that is, okay, and it's taking up a lot of our mental energy, right? But what is disappointing to me, and I read Indian news, on the weekends and so on, and what is amazing to me is I have yet to see a website or a document that actually describes the 5W and 1H of a problem like this. The 5W, 1H is, what, when, where, and H is for how. There's nobody who's trying to explain what that is. And most of the conversation about isne ye kaha, usne wo kaha, and this person is for it and this person is against it, and so on. But of course, it's not that, you should be for it or against it. It's somewhere gray, because there are certain things that are good and certain things that are challenging, that are out there. And so just having an intellectual conversation around that is very challenging. And we want to kind of promote our inventors, innovators, and entrepreneurs to have a mindset where they're not influenced. So you can imagine you're going to see a lot of business plans being sent to us, to investors, on something about cashless payments or new ways of doing finance, which is great, right? But people are just going most likely to go in a direction that's not going to be as scalable or as impactful. So I started having issue with the word itself, demonetization. By the way, had anybody heard that word before November? It kind of came out of nowhere, right? Can you believe there's a whole new English word? And what does that word mean when you break it down? Demonetization. What does it mean? Remove money. Is that what we are doing? We are not, right? What are we doing? We are exchanging. We are remonetizing it. So the word should be remonetized. And are we actually talking about money overall? We're talking about cash. So we are not even talking about money. But actually it's not even cash, we're talking about notes. Right? So what is that? It's like re-noting or something like that. I don't even know what the English word is, but I know the English word is not demonetization for what's going on. So but I have yet to see anybody even challenge the word, forget about the concept and its implications and the good aspects of it, the challenging aspects of it, and what we can do about it. So I hope somebody in this audience is be in one of these 3 categories. Sorry, I don't have a pointer here, so I'm just going to use this. It's going to be in this. I think most of us are on the left right now. Chalta hai, whatever it came our way, so we'll do it. And some people who are really affected, especially in rural areas, are complaining about it. But I don't think anybody is on the rightmost area right now. I mean, we're solving at a personal level, right? I hope you bought enough gold. And but I don't think we're solving it. So I hope, is anybody in this room inspired to just start a blog, right? To kind of start explaining what this is and make the blog more like a Google Doc, so that other experts can. Anybody here from a finance background? Are you what's your background? You're a CA and you're a professor. You're the most appropriate person to do this. Have your friends shown any patience to kind of have a charcha with you, a discussion with you, where you actually understand the kind of the critical aspects of it? That's it. So it's a 3 minutes of conversation, and after that it's about isne kaha, usne kaha. But actually you, and what's your name?
Tanmay.
And Tanmay, you actually have a lot to share based on your academic and your CA, so you're kind of on both sides. You're not sure.
I can share something, but you can only fill a cup that is not full. And usually people think that they know everything.
Right.
So
No, but you know more than most people in this issue.
maybe, yes.
Yeah. I think we need to give some more confidence to Tanmay. Go Tanmay, go Tanmay, go Tanmay.
What exactly would you like to know?
I mean, I know a few things, but I think we need intellectuals like you to start explaining in great detail and, just have a FAQ, frequently asked questions about it. Not just about how to save their money,
Right.
how to deal with their own personal situation, which is fine, but also what it means going forward and how this has been done. For example, demonetization has been done in other countries.
Right.
And what played out over there, or this renoting, as we're recalling it, calling it now, what it means in today's culture and what the numbers are, and and so on. Right? There are lots of aspects to it. The 5W and 1H. What is it? Where is it?
Right.
How it's done? And who is it impacted? And so
There are
on.
actually several people who are doing that out there.
Right.
But in the all chaos and the noise about it, it's all lost.
Right.
So there are several people who are doing that, and people who are trying to right path out of it.
Okay, excellent. So, which is glad, but clearly how many people in the room have seen a blog or a document that explains it in somewhat great detail? Raise your hands. Okay, so you've seen a few. I mean, which like a more detailed description of what the issues are, or it's just a newspaper article. Your neighbor here, what have you seen? Okay, that's good. So you're listening to Niti Aayog. That's pretty fantastic. Somebody wants to raise their hand here. Are you a CA and a professor? Okay, good. Go ahead. You can start yelling. Yeah. You can start. Entrepreneurs don't wait for other things to improve. Right. No, we don't need a lecture on demonetization. We just want to know how to solve it. Right. Right. Absolutely. Right. Mm-hmm. Right. Excellent. Now, that's impressive. That's a very intellectual conversation we're having, right? But that's the kind of discourse we need to have. The point is, as I said, it was a detour. The point is, when we're looking at these challenges, we want to get to the bottom of what it is, as opposed to just saying, hey, listen, we should solve garbage, or we should solve health, right? And fortunately, this audience is very, very intellectual, very, very, experienced. So we can actually have, people like you guys who are able to contribute to the conversation. But I hope the people outside this room are also able to understand how this plays out moving forward. So everything I'm going to tell you after this is actually just common sense. Okay, it's things you already know. But we just need a mental framework, a mental template to move forward. Okay. So as I said, innovator is not an entrepreneur. If you want to make this transition, we have to think in certain stages. And this is what REDX is all about. So if you have to identify a problem statement, which is different than a question or an annoyance or a challenge, then we have to spot the problem. We have to understand how exactly we are going to articulate that. And there are basically 4 stages to it. If you go to redx.io, we have to have a resource map, a problem canvas, a solution canvas, and a findings plot, which really looks at, for a given problem, what are some approaches that will have, which can be evaluated in terms of time, cost, its impact size, any regulation, parallel industries, parallel architectures, and so on. And we have to look at the resources. Instead of just jumping into the problem, you have to look at how else has everybody else done it. Have there been challenges published by NSF or DBT or DST or Gates Foundation or anybody else for that matter? And what have been the failures in this field, right? And this is not something a couple of people who are passionate about a topic are going to be able to solve. So we need to have a atmosphere, just like we heard a few minutes ago, where experts and stakeholders and people who really like to solve those problems can get together and discuss this over time, over a day or two, but possibly over weeks, to really get to the bottom of it. And this seems trivial, but this simply does not happen in our society, all over the world. It simply does not happen. And people are too afraid to take their concepts, take their ideas, take their solutions, and put it in public domain and in a structured way and get a feedback for it. Right? So this is what we're talking about when we talk about spotting a problem. And then about probing solutions, it's critical to think about a solution that, as I said, it's not something we already understand, but a solution could be very advanced, could be very complex, could have multiple components, could require people with various skills, but we are not afraid to go out and use those approaches. And when it comes to growing adoption, it's meaningless to take that and put it that directly to practice. We have to do a trial, we have to do a pilot, and then we have a ready-made ecosystem, an integrated ecosystem or a petri dish where we can try it out in a way that people are willing to accept, give feedback, and we can iterate on it. Now, this is a culture we need to promote if we want our youngsters to go all the way from left to right. Okay? And when it comes to kind of what I'm talking about, seems like a process and it's kind of a bunch of words that you have to kind of trudge through. It kind of sounds very kind of bureaucratic. But if you can make it fun and make it interactive and make it peer-to-peer, actually we can make this happen. And that's what been the process behind REDX, and I'll tell you a little bit more about this now. And REDX is actually made up of multiple layers: REDX clubs, REDX labs, and REDX funds. And before I talk about that, I'll give you, an example of a few of the things we have done. So kind of my journey started with a device to get prescription for your eyeglasses. It's called iNetra. It's a snap-on that goes into a mobile phone, like a binocular. And then you look through it, click on a few buttons, and it gives you a prescription for your eyeglasses, your nearsightedness and farsightedness and astigmatism. And then, of course, you can click on the button and let them know what prescription you want. And this kind of started in my lab a long time ago and became a venture a few years ago. And in India alone, we have 300 million people who need glasses but don't wear them, which means the kids don't go to school because they can't read very well, and people with low vision don't get jobs. So it's a huge socioeconomic problem that we can target by providing them prescriptions, by going to them rather than they coming to an eye doctor. I'm very pleased to see that the sites, I guess it's blocked. There are thousands of locations right now where iNetra solutions are being used, and in real time, they're being prescribed with prescription for eyeglasses. And a lot of these are actually used by optometrists and opticians because they are the interface to provide other solutions as well. So that was kind of start of my journey. And then, this is my lab at MIT, and the students have amazing resources. Everybody has a 3D printer. These guys are having a lot of fun. But the reality is that, the problems of the next 5 billion people who need digital solutions are not in Boston. And my researchers, my team has to go somewhere else to actually understand what the problems are, but also go to those places to actually continue their learning, continue their education. So often a lot of my team members are here in India, not just to see what they can do with their own research, but to learn and collaborate with inventors and researchers here. So it's a great two-way journey for them. And so, after we did iNetra, I and my team had dozens of ideas on other ways we can make, the human vision better. But then I realized that if I went through like a one master's student or one PhD student at a time and spun out companies, it could take us 20 years to make an impact. So we said, why don't we shorten that process and see if we can do this in parallel? And that was the beginning of this realization for REDX. which is peer-to-peer invention, no upfront team problem and solution, and basically a flipped venture funding model. So I'm just going to give you a quick preview of some of these locations. The first one is L.V. Prasad Eye Institute, where we are working on solutions for low vision, abnormal pupillary reactions, and so on. And then we have a REDX hub at V School in Mumbai. We're looking at sleep apnea, looking for hearing challenged and oral imaging, and so on. And many ventures are coming out of these operations. Dr. Ramesh Raskar here. And then Kumbh Mela, where like 30 million people for 30 days, with a lot of corporate ventures. We're looking at health, education, transportation, finance, and so on, right? Housing, crowd density using cell phone tower data, real-time traffic routing, looking at step counters. And we also invited actually the whole NASIC team to MIT in Boston, and they taught a lot of people. And out of that, we have a DISC, a Digital Impact Square, which is a beautiful innovation center, a multi-million-dollar innovation center supported by TCS Foundation that has come up in Nashik. And what we are doing there is looking at extremely important societal problems that also can be monetized. I gave you some examples earlier of the supply chain of garbage is actually very, very lucrative. At the same time, will clean up streets. We're looking at the life cycle of blood. You may not realize, but the blood supply, getting donated blood transferred, stored, analyzed, and delivered is a very, very inefficient process. In fact, because of regulation, you cannot get paid to donate blood, but you have to pay to get the blood from the blood bank. So it's a very inelastic supply chain, and often over the year, the supply and demand of blood is very different. You have often kind of 15th August, 26th January, and other camps when you get suddenly a lot of supply, but demand actually fluctuates because you have the epidemics like dengue come in a very particular season. And this is a massive challenge, and nobody has looked at this in a serious way because the blood banks have a very kind of segregated, it's very decentralized operation that's going on. So if we can fix that, we can actually get blood to the people that matter, and it will not become a luxury for people who are suffering from all this condition. At the same time, we can actually improve the overall health because the quality of the blood that's out there also requires testing of the blood. So why are we not providing that as a service to the whole society, effectively get a free blood test in return for blood donation? So we're looking at a lot of this list models, and many engineers here would be interested in figuring out how exactly do we deal with all those issues when we are doing a blood test at a scale. Madhura, when you're looking at medical device companies, we need a lot of innovations to solve that. At the same time, when it comes to delivery, the way it's delivered right now, of course through using gravity to pump blood into your bloodstreams, sounds like a pretty arcane way to do it. There are a lot of innovations there coming as well. So this REDX hub, inspired by REDX hub, Digital Impact Square in Nashik, is a fantastic opportunity for young people to first of all go through these 4 phases: spot the challenge. Sitting around a table, it's unlikely that a couple of young people will say, let's go and solve the blood supply problem, because we need a multi-pronged attack to look at this aspect, and each of them could be great ventures. So I'm all for doing startups, but if you start thinking about monetizing it on day one, and as we heard earlier, to raise funding, you have to express it in a business plan that's very compelling, that shows the route, shows the path for the next 5 years. But when you get in an area that's not a known unknown, but unknown unknown, then it's very difficult to express what that path is going to look like. The roadmap to go from a concept to a problem to a solution to adoption and then monetization is very unclear. So what is exciting for me is that we can actually overcome this. I think, Professor Karad and I, when we graduated, there are not that many options after you finish your degree. You either join a big company or join government, go to grad school. Of course, some of us will go and start another big institute, so that's different. But there are very few options. But I think for today, for the young who are graduating from, there are many options available, and the tools are highly democratized as well. So we have an opportunity to reconfigure all these resources, to reconfigure all these tools, so that we're sending our young talent in a direction that's going to be impactful, at the same time somewhat successful. We can't be sure. There's always an element of risk, as opposed to sending them in a way where say, beta kuch bhi ho sakta hai, be yourself, if you have passion, you'll do it, and just persevere. I think those kind of messages are actually disrespectful of the passion they're going to put into this effort over the next few years. So it really boils me, it really hurts me when we send messages to our next generation, very mixed messages to our next generation, where we want them to go and solve problems of the society, but we simply don't prepare them in a way that we should be preparing them. So that's REDX.io, and I just put some keywords out here that we are exploring as part of the REDX platform in Nasik. But of course, there are about 45 locations that are coming up as REDX labs and REDX hubs. So that's very exciting. And there are many aspects that you can imagine that could be explored in this setup. So what does it mean to start a REDX club? So as I said, we have gone from a world of education and learning in a physical setting, like at great institutions. By the way, in about 2000 or 2001, MIT in Boston decided that most of the course material will be put online for free. It was called open courseware at that time. And I remember there was a kind of a collective gasp, and people said, what does that mean? You're taking the course material and lecture material from the top institution and you're just making it available for free. Nobody will come to Boston. Nobody will come to MIT. Why would they pay tens of thousands of dollars to show up when everything is free? And of course that was not the case. And the reason why it was okay to put things online and free is that people don't come to MIT in Boston to gain knowledge. They come there to learn, but most importantly, they come for peer-to-peer learning. They know that when they come to MIT, they're going to learn from each other. And also they're going to do peer-to-peer problem solving. And this is not a skill you can acquire just by watching material online. So peer-to-peer learning and peer-to-peer solving is the key element. Now, in some institutions, it's so ingrained that you don't have to do anything more about it. But at institutions where the focus is still hierarchical, because that's the way it has worked, knowledge that's transferred from experts and faculty to the students, and then they go home and do something, I think the models are being challenged. Has anybody here heard about a flipped classroom model? Yeah? It's a very, very impressive concept. So in a flipped classroom model, you do homework in the class and you do learning at home. And the reason is, and even as a professor myself, I feel like my role as a knowledge agent is being diminished very quickly, because my students often actually have much more knowledge because they have read online, they have taken online lectures, or they have read Wikipedia and so on. So they often know things more than me. And so for me to go in a lecture and start writing equations and start doing, presenting material, I'm talking about at a graduate level, undergraduates are different, is not very useful. My role now is actually to help them think through, look at parallel trends, allow them to make connections between seemingly diverse, seemingly disparate concepts, and also to help them think through issues that seem very challenging, but get them over the wall. So that's my role now. My role is more of a catalyst, kind of a knowledge catalyst, as opposed to a knowledge agent. And the same thing is happening for as I said, in online education, which is, we had physical education, then we had online learning, now we are moving to peer-to-peer learning, and I think what's really important is peer-to-peer problem solving, peer-to-peer innovating. Now, as I said, the later part has always happened in physical settings, in the real world settings. Can we take a Coursera or a REDX like model, which has mainly for online learning, and transfer that to peer-to-peer problem solving, peer-to-peer innovating? And that's the mission of REDX, of how we can promote that in a very systematic manner. So what we do in REDX clubs is we have a 10-week course, which is part online, part offline, and we expect a physical location to actually run a club, very much like a robotics club or IEEE club and so on. And during those 10 weeks, you have certain lectures online that are about key concepts, but also the soft skills like leadership, how to solve problems, how to talk, how to present, and so on. And then you have an offline component that's made up of these concepts at the bottom: how to spot a problem, how to talk to stakeholders, how to go into the field and talk to the right people, and then and the 4 stages that are described earlier: resource mapping, problem solution canvas, and findings plot, and also probing a solution where they're not afraid to look at the latest innovation, most disruptive innovations that are out there. And that's the 10-week cycle for REDX clubs. And we hope that through this, we will empower the youth not just to take their known unknowns, but also the unknown unknowns. So they can actually go and venture into fields that are simply not part of any curriculum, that are simply not part of any incubator or accelerator, and they will be empowered to go and look at things that seem at the fringes of their knowledge, and sometimes beyond that. And so the areas that I talked about earlier, kind of street address or wearables for the society, or new ways to use satellite imaging, new ways to use virtual and augmented reality, looking at connections between microbiomes and your mental health. A lot of these areas that are emerging and are sometimes hypotheses, sometimes are just unknown unknowns, will become part of this architecture. And hopefully, once they go through this whole process of a club, spot, probe, grow, they can then go and look at creating startups and ventures. Has anybody here gone through this process before? When I asked question, many people had the startups and already entrepreneurs. Has anybody gone through a process similar to this? Because we want to learn from that as well. Any other institution or mentoring club and so on. Yes, go ahead. Yes.
Solutions for solving problems related to healthcare in low resource settings.
Right.
So the spot problems part of it was through a clinical immersion program.
Absolutely. So I think the Stanford India Biodesign program is a fantastic program.
Yes, it is excellent.
Sends 5 people from Ames to Stanford. It's a very kind of exclusive 5-star program. I think a country like India can barely afford it.
Yes.
But
So,
it costs about ₹1 crore per person. But nevertheless, it's a great program, and we can learn from that as well. So now the question is, can we democratize that and make it available to everyone, right? So that's one of our challenges going forward. And as I said earlier, a lot of times when we face problems, we have 2 instant reactions: either chalta hai or complain about it. And if you have to go to the 3rd and the 4th stage, which is empathize with it and actually solve it, it's not an instinctive feeling. And when we start working as a group, unfortunately it becomes even more ingrained to not go to the 3rd or 4th state. And so I hope, earlier we were talking about how we can make Pune a kind of a invention city. right? Invention city for India. And I think it has all the elements to do that, all the great institutions and amazing people as we can see here. And an individual can become an innovator, a group can become an innovator, a organization can become innovator. How can we make a city of innovators? How can we make a nation of innovators? That's kind of our dream. And if you have to make that possible, we need to kind of, earlier we talked about all this collaboration between the two MITs and having great institutions, but I'll kind of, that should happen, but I should say that no matter how many great institutions we build, we're going to have, order of magnitude more young people who cannot go to those institutions. And so it's our job, it's our responsibility, I feel, that we should continue to build great institutions, but we should make them so open, and we should let the ideas and the energy and the expertise from this great institution go out in a highly scalable way by using today's technologies. Will put so much confidence, so much josh in the new generation that they can take the biggest problems that we face in our generation, and they have the power to go solve them. Thank you. Think we have time for some questions? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. I think we can take up some questions if you have to ask any questions.
Go ahead, Navin.
So 2 questions about a REDX club. One is that you must have seen a lot of REDX clubs start, some of them try and then not go anywhere.
Right.
So my first question is, what are the most common problems that prevent a REDX club from really starting or taking off?
Yeah.
And a sort of related question is this, that MIT, COEP, these are world-class institutions with great students and great professors. What is the situation in, say, somewhere in Karad there is a college where the students have, they're as smart, but they have less confidence, less exposure, and the faculty might not be as exposed. But still, there are people there who are interested, and there are people from here who would be interested in mentoring them. So have you seen examples of REDX clubs flourishing in places like that? Thanks.
That's a very good question. And yeah, we have to be very realistic about what it means to get this. So I should also clarify that, the screens went away. I should also clarify that so far, the REDX platform has already been always about REDX lab, and there's a minor distinction between the two. A REDX lab is where there's a physical lab, where there's a physical presence, we have a lot of experts, and we have a lot of funding, either corporate funding or foundation funding that has happened. So for example, the REDX Influence Lab in Hyderabad is at L.V. Prasad Eye Institute, which is very well funded, and we have a lot of innovators working on very critical problems for vision. And the REDX lab in Mumbai is funded by Tata Trust, and that's has a lot of resources and solving critical problems. Or the one in Nasik is funded by TCS Foundation, and that's a multi-million-dollar facility, and that's going forward. And the one in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, is funded by the local foundation as well. And so all these ones are where we have, at least myself, I put a lot of my personal energy, and our teams have gone personally and made sure things are, mostly doing well. What we have not done yet is actually start REDX clubs. And so that's why I'm here to kind of get the message out that through the Lemlson Foundation, who just recently gave me the award. So the award is really for inventions, but the foundation is also very interested in promoting innovation among the youth. And so through the Lemlson Foundation, we're able to make grants to a REDX club. So anybody can go on the website, redx.io, and apply to start a club. And to start a club, actually, you don't need much. You just need 3 officers, an advisor, an advisory council, a little bit of physical space, and commit to meeting once every week for 2 hours for a 10-week program. And we have not done that yet. But there are about 45 locations that we're evaluating where we could start. And we want some of them to be in Karad, right? And we want them to go through this process of spotting and probing a problem, but we also want them in top institutions. We also want them as part of companies. We have some actually companies who will be starting their own REDX clubs. You know, they are in a very particular sector. We have an agriculture union that's also looking at starting a REDX club to look at, you know, technology in agriculture, for example. And so those institutions would run it in their own way. Nevertheless, we can provide them funding, we can provide them mentorship, and we can provide them a blueprint. So we don't know how well they will do, but we will, you know, we will continue to give them exponentially more funding, and of course they'll find their own funding to run these clubs. So, but anybody can go online right now, redx.io, to start the club. And just talking about Karad and kind of, you know, southern Maharashtra, we have had some amazing people come from those places. You know, some even medical schools, engineering schools, and other schools to participate in that. So I have seen again and again and again of how the talent is actually everywhere. And like you said, often it's mainly because they don't get the right mentorship and the right tools to move forward. So it hurts me that, you know, we expect them to come to top institutes like this rather than reaching out to where they are.
My name is Sachin. I just wanted to have one input I can give actually. So recently I have gone through one of the program. Is actually been, you must be knowing Makers Asylum, right?
Yes.
So this has been actually done by French consulate, was mainly instrumental in putting that particular program. And what they have done is that they got the experts from the Europe, which come to India, and they got the people from all over India. And the best part of this particular program is that they identify the challenges. One would be a water problem, another would be a health problem.
Right.
And so I can give you my experience. I was part of the team,
right,
wherein we had one doctor who is a surgeon, who is doing a surgeon from Nair Hospital. We had one student who is from IIT Madras, myself as an entrepreneur, and we had one more guy who was mainly a designer.
Right.
So what happened with that is that we were able to come up with a prototype. We are actually solving a problem for a disabled person wherein they are not able to move, they don't have hands as well as legs, and they wanted to communicate, which is a real problem. Wherein we were able to come up with a solution because of the best team which was there and the inputs which are there.
Yeah.
So I would also encourage wherein we can get the experts from other, rather than only, because there will be expertise, the problems have been solved somewhere else,
yes,
in the world.
Yes.
We can correlate that and put up on those.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And I just...
I'm a big fan of Makers Asylum.
Yeah.
In fact, Vaibhav, who started
Right,
it, is
right.
part of my
Yeah,
Anitra
yeah,
team.
he's
He left Anitra to start Makers Asylum.
Absolutely.
So, and the French collaboration is fantastic.
Yeah.
As well. But that's exactly the point. I think
Right.
you're making an important observation, which is you have to let people with very different skills
Right.
come to a place together. And my guess is that you did not start it out with a notion of, hey, my team members have to be somebody I know, and that I have to have a monetization, I need to have a business plan
Right.
before we get started.
Right.
And this is exactly the point I'm trying to emphasize, which is we are sending a wrong signal to our youngsters, saying on day one, they need to have a team, a problem, and a business plan.
Right.
And we have to let them go through this process for a few months, a few weeks, and at the end of it, they should absolutely explore entrepreneurship and you know, other ventures. But before that, there's a phase that they need to explore. So
Right.
Makers Asylum.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, like, I'm glad to hear that Mr. Deshpande is your mentor, because yesterday I talked to him. He is coming to India and is going to be supportive in terms of the program. So
Excellent.
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You should make sure you should watch all the talks by Deshpande. Yes, go ahead.
You just mentioned that there are two kinds of societies. One is Silicon Valley, which is solution rich, and another one is the rest of the world, which is problem rich.
Right.
And you just mentioned that you were trying to solve the problem in Boston for the people who are not facing that problem in Boston, but in the rest of the world. And just this gentleman said that in problem rich society, there are some people who are trying to solve the problem, who have some innovative ideas, but they are not getting enough resources. And on the other hand, in solution-rich society, though they don't have their own problems, they are trying to solve the problems for others. But whatever I see, it's happening that the problems are not yet being solved at larger extent. So do you think that how these people from solution-rich society can reach to the problem-rich society, just like you reached, but do you think that more and more people should reach out and give a helping hand to those who are in the society, who know their problem very well than others? Because if I'm facing that problem, I will know it in a better way than someone else.
Yeah, so you need some kind of a tunnel, kind of info tunnel.
So what is your opinion about this?
No, you're absolutely right. This challenge of kind of out of sight, out of mind is huge. If you're not aware of those challenges, you will not even be able to have the mental preparation to reduce that challenge down to a problem statement. So in fact, for REDX clubs, they get modest funding, and the only expected deliverable at the end of 10 weeks is that the club has to publish the problem statement, the articulated problem statement, the 5W1H of the problem on their website. So our expectation is that a lot of the REDX clubs will go and start publishing the problem statement, say, hey, to solve garbage, here is exactly the problem. The problem could be education, the problem can be new technology to reduce garbage to energy source, the problem can be that the supply chain, the distribution is and collection is broken. There could be so many problems, but to reduce that down to a problem that really can be a nugget takes a long time. So we hope that the REDX clubs will actually start creating these lists of problems, and REDX clubs on their own will not solve the problem, but the REDX labs and anybody else for that matter, you could be in a new program, you could be in a new institute, you could be in a research lab, you'll actually go ahead and actually start solving that problem, whether you're in India or anywhere in the world, right? And so just having that dialogue is what you're pointing out is critical. And by the way, the whole world is interested in figuring out what problems they should work on. And I think if I had to kind of summarize everything I'm talking about, is the biggest challenge is to figure out what problem to work on. And if you can get to that, after that execution, encouragement, support, everything can be figured out. But what problem to work on is the biggest hurdle for our society. Yes?
Yeah, taking a cue from your last statement, what problem to work on? You talked about Pune as a smart city. The biggest problem being faced is haphazard traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Can this be a problem statement for REDX?
Right. So I think
work on that?
You're in phase 2, right? You have tolerate, whine, empathize, and solve. And right now we're at phase 2. Yes, we can complain about it, but to really empathize and reduce it, and to something that's the nugget, and to solve it is still a long way to go, because there's so many elements to traffic. Again, there's education. Again, there is more Olafication, more Uberification. There is a smart transport itself. Reconfiguring of your cities so that you work closer to your job is closer to your work. Redesigning your work hour. There's so many ways you can solve traffic. It's not just about one particular aspect of it. And just to get to that, I mean, you can see reports online on that others have written. I'm sure PIC is probably looking into this and will have another, kind of strike at it. And if you can move to that phase, then certainly we can have a lot of startups that say, oh, if I can create a marketplace where people switch their houses and jobs so that they can be closer to their jobs, that will actually eliminate a lot of traffic. That's a startup idea. It's a Uberification of your house. Just swap your house and be closer to your workplace, and so on. Or somebody would say, hey, smart transport. Instead of creating vehicles that are wide, let's create vehicles that are very narrow, right? So that the ambulances, for example, don't have to be wide. They could be very narrow, so they can go through narrow regions. You can look at various aspects of this problem, but to reduce that to a problem statement itself takes a lot of expertise, even before we start solving it.
Okay, due to time constraint, we will have one last question.
Sure. Let's take a question from a woman. We haven't heard from a woman after Madhura, so if you don't mind, let's promote that. Go ahead. Sorry. So the question is, what makes, how can a teacher become a good mentor?
Yes.
Wow, that's a very deep question for that. I don't think I figured it out myself yet. I usually just blabber on, and I hope they pick up something meaningful. I should be also careful about saying that the word mentor or advisor is very risky, because almost all advising is loaded with attribute and survivor bias. If you talk to somebody who's successful, they will say, you should do this. You should do things this way, because it worked for me. And that's a survivor bias, because they say, oh, because it worked for me, you should really do it in this particular way. And just look at me, how successful I am. Isn't that the right way? And often, what they really mean is that despite me making those choices, somehow I became successful. In reality, you should not do that, because there is all these other things. But because of the survivor bias, despite their good intentions, they're reinforcing, some of the wrong choices they made themselves. And this is the issue when it comes to mentoring and advising. So, there's a blog that I have written about what it means to mentor and advise, which also you should not take, because it's loaded with my own survivor bias. But nevertheless, there's some good conversations people have had on being careful about calling ourselves mentors and advisors. And the question you really asked, I didn't answer, but I hope this is a good point for that longer conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. It was so humble, so encouraging, so interactive, and few important points like tolerate, why solve. Communities should celebrate innovations, going to the bottom of the problem, and what problems to work on. Spot problem, probe solutions, grow adoption, and launch. These were some important points made by sir. Now, I request the chairperson for today's function, Dr. V. Premnath sir, to please give his remarks.
Good evening, everybody. I'll try and keep it as short as possible. First of all, I just want to thank on behalf of everybody, Ramesh Raskar, for coming and speaking in Pune. And there are many reasons for that. To me, and you also heard Ramesh Raskar speak today, there are many aspects of what he said and what he represents that actually I think should inspire many of us here to look at some of those ideas that he's talking about. One of the things which I just want to point out, and a few things which come to my mind, which I want to bring to your attention, are these. First of all, Ramesh Raskar represents somebody who is an inventor and an innovator. Of course, he has other roles as well, a professor, entrepreneur. He said he's an investor, and actually Professor Karad said that he's probably also a movie star out there, right? But that said, the heart of it is innovation. And one of the things which MIT has excelled in and has demonstrated a lot of success is in its dedication to problem solving. The fact that picking the largest problems, picking the most important problems, pursuing them, irrespective of whether that is in vogue or not, and then finding solutions for it and finding ways and methods to solve some of those has been at the heart of what MIT has been doing for many years. And it's always surprised me how people have picked in very daring ways the most important problems, irrespective of whether the solution is in sight or whether the resources are in sight. And in that sense, it's actually very entrepreneurial. Because if you look at entrepreneurship itself, what is entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship is about a scalable and sustainable way of delivering innovations. And often, the entrepreneur is actually somebody pursuing a vision and an opportunity and a passion, irrespective of what resources are available at his disposal at any given time, right? He is not necessarily looking at a problem which is going to be solved by the resources in his immediate disposal. He will generate those, he will find those, he'll put them together, but he is not necessarily looking at what's with him today. Today, many of you, if you talk to the younger generation, their idol is somebody like Elon Musk. You talk to them, and that's the name that comes up first, right? And when you hear them out, you'll see it's just the audacity of the idea, just the passion that, with which it's being pursued, that's so inspiring. When he got started, I'm sure there were many naysayers. Even today, if I tell you that electric vehicles is the future for India, I'm sure many of you would not agree, right? But there was a person who could think of it and could actually, believe in it and raise the resources to do it. Of course, his company is in debt also, considerable debt. But that said, the point is that he raised the resources for it. And I think in the same vein, many of Ramesh Raskar's ideas also fit into the same model. When the video he showed about trillion frames per second, many of us would wonder why even bother with that, right? Where do you get started with such ideas? Why would you even bother to think of or imagine a need for trillion frames per second? But yes, people are thinking of such problems, and that is inspiring, and it's important to have people who are talking of these problems speaking in forums in Pune. That said, of course, Ramesh is also a great educator. You have seen his commitment to young people, students, all the clubs and the labs that he is setting up, and I hope many of you will show a lot of support. I have not yet, please correct me if I'm wrong, but is there a REDX lab or a club in Pune? No. Then there is a good enough reason to probably launch one. And today might be a good day to discuss that with Ramesh as well. A lot of young, very dynamic and creative young people in Pune, and probably, it's surprising that there isn't such an effort in Pune as well. One other point I just want to make is innovation is one thing, entrepreneurship is another, and as Ramesh also said, entrepreneurship is not the immediate thing to think about when you think about innovation, and it's only one of those vehicles. But there's something more beyond that, and that is technology foresight. We do see in a lot of entrepreneurship in India. India is a very entrepreneurial country actually, and nobody can argue on that. In fact, if there are global surveys, you'll find India ranked right up there. Some of the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, for example, ranked India a few years back right at #1, right? But when it comes to technology foresight, looking at taking technology risks, thinking of ideas where new technology, novelty is at the heart of it, that's where we somehow seem to flounder. That's where we somehow seem to struggle. And why is that so? And what is it that we can learn from what Ramesh is doing or what MIT is doing in terms of building those companies, encouraging those innovators, creating an ecosystem where such inventions and innovators can flourish? And how do we build that is an interesting question. I would not try to address that today. There's no time for that. But I think Ramesh tried to talk about that as well. And that is an important thing many of our academic institutions need to think about as well. When we are building the future of the country, and many of the young people who are sitting here represent the future. How do we get them to think about the most meaningful problems? How do we encourage them to bravely look at problems which don't necessarily, attract the most commercial interest at this time, but we know are the most pressing problems of the day today. Because believe me, if you have a solution, there are many takers at the end of it. Okay? It's invariably you will find that most of the biggest businesses that you talk about today started off with a very small idea which at that time was considered perhaps insignificant. And thank God it was so, because if it was not so, the biggest players in the field would be chasing that, right? So I talk about often Indian pharma, for example. When it took off, it was not the Tatas or the Birlas who really pursued that. There were people from the field of science and engineering who knew what was coming, who could take that up, right? I consider MIT, Pune, also an entrepreneurial venture. I'm sure when Professor Karaj started off, somebody must have wondered what an engineer was trying to do, building an academic institution. And look at the scale today, right? So it is entrepreneurship. It is thinking about large problems, tackling them, going about solving all of these issues. I am very grateful to Ramesh for picking up on some of these ideas and leaving us with those today. And I hope some of you, including the faculty and the students, will volunteer to set up some REDX clubs and show that Pune can actually stand up and stand out in this endeavor as well. So I'll stop here. Thank you. And I'll leave the floor.
Thank you, sir. Now we would listen to words of wisdom by Professor Dr. Vishwanath Karad, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ramesh Raskar ji and Dr. V. Premnath for visiting MIT and finding time to speak and address our students and the very enthusiastic teaching faculty. I don't know how, but I had a feeling just when I saw him on the TV, this Ramesh Raskar. I had the fortune of visiting and seeing on the television itself. I was not knowing that he's going to come here. So thank you so much, Ramesh Raskar ji. I am remembering a time when the media lab people had visited MIT. And it was Sanjay Dhande, fortunately, who happens to be my student of 69 batch, the director of IIT Kanpur, who had brought the media lab people on this campus. And they were very surprised and shocked. They said, "Is it an engineering college?" They had asked this question straight. When they saw my place of sitting, I said, "Yes, this is an engineering college known as MIT of Pune, India." And the very word I had asked, I don't want to elaborate much, but you had written somewhere here a word like wearable computers. And I just asked out of very curiosity, can you design a wearable computer which can give me a peace of mind? ऐसा कुछ कंप्यूटर बना सकते हैं आप कि जिससे मुझे सुख, समाधान और शांति मिलेगी? जैसे कोट पहनते हो वैसा कंप्यूटर बनाओ, और the whole world is waiting to find out the pathway to really सुख, समाधान, शांती आपण म्हणतो. गमतीने प्रश्न विचारला. संजय धांडे आणि ते दोन प्रोफेसर्स होते. They were a little surprised. A very great learned professors. I don't remember the names. But what I'm saying, Mr. Raskar, the very hall where we are sitting just now, I'm a mechanical engineer and knows little about IT, computer, artificial intelligence. But this very place where I have put up this, I'm not a designer. But the concept, planning and architecture, I'm very crazy. This has got 12 pillars at the base depicting 12 rasis. On the top we have 27 pillars. My friends and teachers know it very well, but for your information, you being such a great scientist and innovator, a researcher, and also a developer, entrepreneur, we have been trying to understand in this very hall, which is known as the Philosophers and Naneshwara Hall, trying to resolve the equation like force F is proportional to K times M1 into M2 upon R square. Very simple equation of physics. But we are more curious to know how these, between the two masses, whatever the invisible force is working or acting, how it affects the mindset is the main issue. जगामध्ये सर्वात मोठा प्रॉब्लेम सध्याच्याला असा आहे सुखाचा, समाधानाचा, शांतीचा, and how to resolve the chaos, confusion, bloodshed, massacre, terrorism and violence. पॉसिबली जगाच्या समोर जे अनेक प्रश्न आहेत ते टेक्नॉलॉजीमध्ये आपण एवढ्या वरच्या स्तराला पोहोचलोय की काही तसं फार शिल्लक राहिलं असं वाटत नाही. आता नवीन होत राहील, पण आय डोंट नो, इट इज इंडिया अँड पॉसिबली रास्कर साहेब. I had a dream when this MIT was started, when I wrote this name, Maharashtra Academy of Engineering and Educational Research, the parent body. And then I wrote MIT, Maharashtra Institute of Technology. Many people ridicule me, क्या समझते हो भाई अपने आप को, और क्या MIT बोस्टन है क्या? मैं बोला पता नहीं भाई, मुझे मालूम है कि रास्कर साहब को when it is said about so many wonderful prizes and awards, बट एक दिन शायद इसी भारत से आई एम होपिंग हम होंगे या नहीं पता नहीं, लेकिन अ डे विल कम व्हेन वी विल हैव सम ग्रेट नोबेल लॉरेट्स फ्रॉम इंडिया एंड आल्सो फ्रॉम एमआईटी. मे बी रास्कर साहब, आई होप एंड लुक टू व्हेन विजय भटकर और मशलकर, व्हेन आई टॉक टू देम, आई हैव सम गुड फ्रेंड्स who can think of research, development and innovation and invention. You have been such a very young, dynamic, talented person. Just earning patents is the first step. But possibly in MIT itself, you know how many Nobel laureates we have. But how come even Mahatma Gandhi was not given a Nobel Peace Prize? 5 times his name came, even our Sukhatme's son. Or there are so many people whom I know, but we have a great hope that a person like you should be, and you are on the pathway of some such great honors in the future. We have a hope and confidence, and possibly you have that decency, decorum and dignity, a passion and fire in your belly to do something good in this area. I am really glad. Mangesh, Pujari and my friends, I would advise them that if there can be some collaborative programs, and if you feel like putting your laboratory of REDX, whatever you have been trying to do for the innovation lab, MIT would be always willing to join hands with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now may I invite Professor Dr. L.K. Kshisagar, sir, Principal MIT, to please deliver vote of thanks.
Friends, on behalf of Honorable Karat sir, Mangesh sir, all my young student friends and the audience, I must thank Dr. Raskar for giving us a very good recipe. But to my young friends, I would say that in your career you will face a lot of problems which don't exist today. So you must prepare for that and take up something from the recipe as well. I would like to thank Dr. Premnath, who has been supporting our TBI and the NCL Venture Center, and also for the chairing the session. He has been helping us a lot in the past as well. To Pune International Centre and particularly Prashant Girbane, I am thankful for co-hosting this session. Finally, I must thank the audience today who has come from various organizations, startups, my colleagues and young student friends. I thank you all for giving a patient listening. Also would like to thank the representatives of press and media for giving a good publicity for this event. Sir, may I say that we have got good robotics clubs and automotive clubs, and probably they would interact with you to get into the REDX platform very soon. I must say thanks to you all once again. Thank you.
Thank you. The program is over.
विश्वात्मके देवे येने वाग्यज्ञे तोषावे तोषोनि मज जावे पसाय दान जे खळांची व्यंकटी सांडो तया सत्कर्मी रतिवाढो भूता परस्परे पडो मैत्र जीवांचे दुरिताते तिमिरदा विश्वस्वधर्म सूर्ये पाहो जो देवांशील तो तेलाहो प्राणी जात वर्षत सकळ मंगळी ईश्वर निष्ठांची मांदियाळी अनवरत भूमंडळी भेट तू भूता चला कल्पतरूंचे आरव चेतना चिंतामणींचे गाव बोलते जे अर्णव पियुषाचे चंद्रमे जे अनंतन मार्तंड देता बहीण ते सर्वाही सदा सज्जन सोय रे हो तू किंबहुना सर्व सुखी पूर्ण होनी सिही लोकी भजिजो आदि पुरुषी अखंडित आणि ग्रंथोपजीविये विशेषी लोकीये दृष्टादृष्ट विजये हो आवे जी येथ म्हणे श्री विश्वेश्वराव हा होईल दान पसाव येणे वरे ज्ञान देवो सुखिया झाला.
Thank you.